Everybody, a warm induction round of applause for the one and only Johan Kugelberg.
Thank you very much. So, you guys all remember the Indiana Jones movies. So, at one point, Harrison Ford looks at his dad in the third movie and says, we are only passing through history. This is history. So, I am, on one level, not worthy to stand here until every legendary MC and DJ and breaker and designer and writer is inducted before me. But in saying that, history is usually supported and documented through the initial gathering of artifacts by enthusiasts. And an enthusiast I am, and to utilize whatever techniques that I've learned over the years to help document arguably the single most important art form of the late 20th century has been my honor and my privilege. I would not be standing here if it wasn't for Grandmaster Caz, who I would like to address for a moment. Because when we were driving up here earlier today, and I was thinking about you, Caz, I was thinking about, like Robert Johnson's role in the history of the blues, Buddy Bolden's role in the history of jazz, and how sometimes the most iconic and most potent and most innovative artists do not become mainstream names, but they become the names that are the most celebrated by, on one hand, scholars and academics, on another hand, super nerd fanboys and fangirls. And since I'm half super nerd and half academic, I really want to point out that the innovation of Grandmaster Caz cannot be overemphasized. Whether it is the poetry, whether it is the performance, or for that matter, as somebody who brings people together. Caz brought me together with Joe Conzo when I was bitching about not being able to find any documentary photography on the early days of hip-hop. And Caz goes, oh yeah, I got a guy. And that actually really speeded up the journey for all of us. Because when we produced the first International Academic Hip-Hop Symposium for Cornell University in 2007, it was so important to be able to bring visuals to it. Everybody's seen Wild Style, everybody's seen Style Wars, but that's not early enough. Joe was there at, Norman Thomas in 1978 as the art form is really starting to move. And that's like being at jazz shows in New Orleans in 1916. It's just that important. So I really want to honor Caz beyond all of the other honors that are bestowed upon you. I just have to throw my hat in the ring as well and say without Grandmaster Caz, no, this wouldn't have happened. I miss Buddy Esquire every day because we became close friends throughout all of our crazy years together. Buddy Esquire's grand narrative, as preserved with our friends in DC, as preserved at Cornell University, it wouldn't have been preserved at all if it wasn't for Buddy's unbelievably harsh, rare comic book problem. Buddy was such a comic book nerd, it was almost frightening from time to time. Twice a year, right? There was a big comic book convention in New York. And Buddy would clockwork show up 3 weeks before the comic book convention and go, Johan, I found another stack of flyers. Maybe it's time for you to go to the ATM. So I kept buying Buddy's flyers and buying Buddy's original artwork and getting him receipts and letting him know how much everything was worth. Because that's not completely selfless, because anybody who's a hardcore collector knows that the legend has to go to you first with the cool stuff. Otherwise, you don't get to the cool stuff. Otherwise, Koji gets the cool stuff, and the cool stuff goes to Japan. You know, you got to get in the mix quickly. So that was the luck of the relationship with Buddy, and that we got to bring Buddy to Cornell several times. You know, he was a shy guy, but he got like round of applause and accolades. And slowly but steady, together with my friend Nick Gazin, we got Buddy's oral history of his entire life before he passed away. And the story is totally fascinating too, because Buddy is like, one chunk is like Star Wars science fiction nerd, right? One chunk is like Spider-Man comics. And then when he was in high school, he goes to the school library and finds a book on Art Deco. He's like, yeah, this Art Deco stuff is really something. And then Buddy links the Art Deco book he found in school with the intact Art Deco movie theaters, which were still all over the Bronx in the 70s with those facades. So then you look at Buddy's flyers and you go, oh yeah, a little Star Wars, a little Spider-Man, a little Art Deco, and then the visionary nature of Buddy's extraordinary visual talent. Buddy would fight with his landladies nonstop. He would, he worked for UPS for most of his life, and he would rent rooms with different Jamaican and Trinidadian battle axe ladies who he would get into regular fights with. And in one of his last apartments, he got into a fight with his landlady that was so gnarly that she threw out all of his stuff. And hundreds of flyers got lost. 50, 60 original paste-up artworks got lost. We were so depressed. We didn't even know what to do. And I was like, you could have sold them to me. And he's like, no, I was holding out for the next comic book convention. Around the same time, he hadn't paid his storage bill up in Co-op City for like a couple of years. I can't remember if you were with me up there, Joe. So we drive up to Co-op City, we pay off like the 2 years of back rent on the storage space or whatever it is, and then we empty it out. There was a lot of truly, I think the word is evocative trash in the storage space. Under the truly evocative trash was boxes of flyers. So those are the flyers that are going to DC today. Oh, wow. And it has always, you know, as my wife Lila can attest, it's like Slow and Steady is not only the nerd and the scholar and the academic, but also the tourist. So in some sort of weird way, I knew that there was somebody like Jeremy and his crew that were going to come along, and that the ripple effect of preserving hip-hop's history is still going on. We got to remember that it's really, really early still. There wasn't serious scholarship devoted to the history of jazz until the late 1950s. There wasn't really serious scholarship on the history of the blues until the 60s and 70s. And, which is completely disgusting, it took almost 40 years before really, really serious and substantial collections of civil rights material started being gathered by museums and academic institutions. So let's keep all of that one in mind, that we're still baby stepping, and it's still early, and that all of these ventures together will ultimately be what helps people 100 years from now, 200 years from now, let's say 300 years from now, to understand the absolutely extraordinary cultural narrative that commenced in this room, you know. And the guys and gals who did this, you guys are all alchemists. You made gold not out of like rocks, you made gold out of nothing. And the gold is cultural gold. And you know, Jay-Z can buy as many super tankers and jet skis as he wants. He's still Jay-Z. He's all right, but it's not cultural gold like the legend and the legacy of the founding fathers. That was the moderately boring part. Now comes the super boring part. I have to rattle off some names because I am always professionally standing on the shoulder of giants, like always, always, always. So I'm super honored that I'm getting this award from you great, great people. I'll say I'm not worthy 3 more times. I'm not worthy, I'm not worthy, I'm not worthy. But I'm really, really honored that I've been allowed to be of assistance in supporting the legacy of hip-hop.
Thank you.
Here comes the main call. This is like one of those like hair metal album covers from the 1980s, and you have like, thanks to the guys for the beers, and then a list of 400 names. Grandmaster Caz, Joe Conso, Grand Wizzard Theodore, Curtis Sherrod, Ann Kenny and Catherine Reagan from Cornell University, visionary women, powerhouse women. Stephen Lowenthal, who at the time was the chair of the Cornell Library, and was the guy who was going, this is just as important as civil rights, let's do this. Jonathan and Blake Leatham. Blake Leatham, known as the graffiti artist Keo, who was born in the Bronx tag, and his brother Jonathan, who's a lovely man and best-selling author. I want to thank the late Julio Santo Domingo, who was always a strong supporter. You know, Phase 2 and Buddy Esquire. May they rest in peace and may their work live forever. Christy from Tools of War, such a great lady. Cool Lady Blue. Africa Bambaataa and the Zulu Nation. Jun and Koji from BBP. A couple of Japanese hep cats who understood all of this almost before everybody else. Jeff Boardman, who I staged a hip-hop exhibition with in London in 2005. Andrew Upton and Kate Blanchett, who have been super supportive of any kind of hip-hop journey that I've gotten on. Fab Five Freddy, Kevin Young, Andres Santo Domingo, Mike Davis, Pogi from United Arrows, Utah Man, Jeff Chang, Carlos Rodriguez, and the Boo Hooray staff, past and present, who just busted out and made all of this happen. And that's enough of that. Thank you for listening.